All right, we've got Natalie Brunell here with us. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
All right, you just quit your job, so congratulations on that, right? Another person quitting their job to go full-time to work on Bitcoin, which, by the way, Bitcoin just crossed $55,000. Not saying it's because the show's on, but maybe it is. Tell us, one, why did you quit? And then we'll talk about what you're gonna do next.
Yeah, so I've worked in legacy TV news for over 10 years. And just in the same way that decentralization is hitting finance, I think it's also hitting media. I mean, you guys are making this show, right? And I just feel like I've been reporting for the last 10 years on the front lines, in the trenches, on some of the biggest crises facing our country. And when you learn about Bitcoin, you start to connect the dots that a lot of it has to do with money and how broken our system is. And so I just got really passionate about this space, and I felt like there's a huge gap in terms of financial literacy in this country. So I wanted to help. I want to educate people, and I want to spread the word.
Talk to us about going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, because I think we watched it like live happen on Twitter. This started as like, I think you heard about Bitcoin, then I think you read the Bitcoin Standard, and then it was just like you fell off a cliff deep down in the rabbit hole, and then there was a podcast. Then all of a sudden I saw you started interviewing all these people, and I was like, what is going on? Who is this person? But like, walk us through that journey of actually discovering Bitcoin and like how you got kind of orange pilled.
Yeah, so I've actually had Bitcoin since 2017. I was working at a station up in Sacramento in the state capital of California, and heard about Bitcoin because I was dating a guy who knew someone at Coinbase, and all the guys were talking about Bitcoin and crypto. I was like, what is this? And I really regret not learning more about it then, because obviously I would have a lot more right now. But I bought a little, and then I really started going down the rabbit hole when the pandemic hit. Like, markets crashed. I think everyone sort of realized, is this the fourth turning? Things are never going back to the way they were. And I just started consuming all the literature, all the YouTube videos, all the education online I could, read the Bitcoin Standard multiple times, read a bunch of books, and I was like hooked. And I decided to turn my podcast, which I had been interviewing people about their lives and success stories. It was called Career Stories. I decided to just pivot, focus solely on Bitcoin, interview the legends, including yourself, and learn more about why you guys have this conviction. And it turned into something I didn't even expect. I left my job.
You've interviewed a whole bunch of people, Michael Saylor all the way on down. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned from actually doing the interviews? Like, what are the takeaways for you?
Yeah, and my claim to fame is also having Peter Schiff admit that he should have bought Bitcoin, which was awesome. It's just been fascinating to see how different everybody's backgrounds are. Everyone comes from, some people humble beginnings, some people have this, massive investment background. But ultimately, everyone realized that there's something wrong in our system, in our economic money printing society that we live in. And Bitcoin's the solution. It's this sort of life raft that can fix a lot of the problems that are facing this country and the world. So it was just interesting to see everyone's like transformation down the rabbit hole, and how much we all have in common, right? We all come from different backgrounds, but ultimately we want to help empower people. We feel like the system shouldn't be rigged against us. And I think that this provides financial freedom and access for everybody. I think that's amazing.
Now, when you quit, you didn't just quit just to go do the podcast. You're going to continue to do the podcast, but also you are going to go create this training program for women in this entire community around women joining the Bitcoin community. Let's first talk about, there's not a lot of women. Yeah. Right? If I go on Twitter and I look through my Twitter feed, not a lot of women. When I go and I say, hey, who should we bring on as guests on the show? There's just not a lot of women to choose from. And so it's very obvious. I think our YouTube audience is like 94% male. And that's across the world, right? So what is the issue, or like, how do you identify, like, why is it so male dominant versus having more of a balance of like 50-50 men and women?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the exact reasons, but if you just look at the world of finance in general and investing, it's predominantly male driven. And I think that there were some really interesting surveys that were put out recently by BlockFi and other companies saying women know about cryptocurrency. They even acknowledge that the price is going to go up in the next 5 years, but they just feel hesitant and they're not willing to invest in it, or they don't feel like they understand it enough. So I feel like we need to change that, right? Because Bitcoin is for everyone. We need to get all sorts of people involved. And I think that the gender gap really needs to decrease. So that's something that I really want to do. I want to bring more girls in. I want to get the girl memes going, and create like a sorority and a community where women can like network and have their voices uplifted in this space.
So you're creating a training program. For those that don't know, we being myself and a couple other folks, have been training as many people as we possibly can in Bitcoin and crypto. It's almost all men, unfortunately. And what we've been doing is doing that in the way that, one, we can get them educated, but two, try to help them get jobs. We're going to help you. And you've put together an entire curriculum. It's way better than ours, just because you actually have the skill set to do it. And talk to us about this program in terms of like what women who go through it are actually going to get out of it.
Yeah, so this is not just learning about Bitcoin, like fundamentals of Bitcoin and sort of how Bitcoin empowers societies around the globe, but it's also the history of money. It's the history of our economic system, starting from the very beginning when we had barter, all the way to fiat government money, when the Federal Reserve was, invented, when we went off the gold standard, all of that. So we cover a huge amount of information, but it's very interactive. We have 5 days a week of events, discussion groups, social things, question and answers, and we have amazing coaches. We have an amazing guest panel of some of the most successful women in the space. And again, we just want to provide a community for women where they can engage with one another, where they feel like it's a safe, welcoming space. Not that, bro Twitter is not welcoming, but, just a place where women can see it as an entry point to start to network and engage with each other, share ideas, maybe connect for future job opportunities, and just learn about Bitcoin and our monetary system and be able to also articulate the message to their own communities.
So when you think about women going through this program, well, the part to me that's so fascinating is like, one, you can learn, but two is the community, right? Mm-hmm. And I just put in the chat, I said, if you're a guy watching this, go tell your wife, your girlfriend, your female friend, a stranger at the store. Like, we need as many women in this industry as possible. How do you think about the community aspect of that and why that's so important?
Well, I think women in general, we're so community driven. We love sort of the idea of sharing things and being a part of something bigger. And so I think that that's the most important element, because you can go online by yourself, right? You could watch a bunch of YouTube videos. That's what I spent basically all my free time over the last year doing. I read all the books, but there's something to be said about being able to engage and interact live with other people who might have the same questions as you, or maybe you learn from their questions. Maybe you meet someone who becomes a lifelong friend. Maybe they connect you to someone in crypto that ends up getting you a job. But we're all just we're learning from each other. And I think connection's one of the best things in this space, which is growing so quickly. And I think there's a great opportunity to bring more people in.
One thing also is your family's not from America. Mm-mm. And I think that one of the most interesting parts of this is many immigrants to the United States have this almost cognitive dissonance, right? You live in a Western world country where there's great infrastructure. If I go to the ATM for the most part, unless the bank's being stupid, they give me my money. And sure, we can complain all day about the banks, but the currency is somewhat stable and there's somewhat good services. That's not true around a good portion of the world. So talk a little bit about your family kind of coming here and how that plays into your interest in Bitcoin.
Yeah, so my family came here for the American dream. They didn't come here to necessarily be, rich like Jeff Bezos and have a yacht and all that, but they just wanted, a nice house, the middle class life, a vacation for their kids, good schools. And for me, I've tweeted before that Bitcoin is now my American dream, because I feel like over the last 20 years since we've been in this country, things have just gotten harder and harder. My family lost everything in the financial crisis. They are representative of the people out there who, have always held most of their assets in cash or savings accounts. They don't know necessarily how to invest, and they see the stock market as something risky. They couldn't afford a big house that's going to appreciate in value. So, I see them as the little guy, and all the people I've reported on and interviewed over the last 10 years, I see the little guy, and I see the little guy constantly getting screwed. And I think that there needs to be something done where you give the power back to them to be able to work for their money and then not have it lose value. Let it, go into your bank account and appreciate, let you, plan for the future, be able to save for the future so that you can take care of your family. That's what's really important to me, because that's my family in a nutshell. They're good people. They've always followed the rules, paid their taxes. They should be able to keep their money and not have it depreciate in value every year just by having it in the bank.
When you think of a woman going through a program like this, I think there's people who say, okay, they'll learn about Bitcoin, maybe they'll go buy Bitcoin. There's going to be a community. They can talk about things that maybe they're uncomfortable talking about on Twitter or whatever. But also there's this element of almost female empowerment around finances.
Totally.
And I always talk to Pompliano about this of I think it's Beyonce, maybe. I forget who says it, but somebody's like, if you want to change the way the world looks, give money to women and then like get the fuck out of their way, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And if you do that, like it completely changes the way that assets get allocated, investments get made. People naturally, like, you invest in people that have similar experiences to you, that look more like you, and things like that. So talk through a little bit of like what you see the impact being.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've even heard those stories of, like giving the microloans to women in underprivileged, global economies, and they uplift their community because they now can make financial decisions. And I just think that there's something so special about empowering women. They have so much purchasing power in our country. I've been reading all these stats, putting together the training materials, and it's like women make up the majority of home purchases. They make up the majority of consumer spending. They have like $40 trillion in consumer spending behind them. So, why aren't they investing more? Why don't they feel comfortable with crypto? We have to give them an environment where they feel empowered and feel like they understand it. They can communicate with one another in the way girls communicate with one another. And I just think it's super exciting. Yeah, I mean, a lot of women want to make smart decisions. They just need to be given that education and that confidence. And I think that this space is going to be 50-50 before we know it. Like, I'm really excited about it.
You want to hear something wild that a lot of people don't like to admit? So I just, at Galzera in the YouTube chat just reminded me of this. Mike Green, wife made him buy Bitcoin. Jason Calacanis, wife made him buy Bitcoin. I actually think Jason Calacanis' wife bought the Bitcoin and he didn't. And whenever somebody's like, "Hey, you're negative against Bitcoin, you're a bear on Bitcoin," it's like, no, my wife owns some.
Yeah.
Like that's always his defense. And so I do think that there's an entire portion of the industry that just like nobody really knows about. Like nobody talks about it. They're not on Twitter or whatever. And so the Galzera in the YouTube chat said, "My wife made me buy it too."
Oh,
so like
awesome.
there is this element I think that kind of gets played out here that a lot of folks don't really talk about, right?
Yeah, and we're not risk averse. I think women actually take really big risks. And in fact, when I heard about Bitcoin from the guy I was dating, his friend was at Coinbase, I ended up buying more Bitcoin than the guy I was dating. I was like, oh, I believe in this. Like I'm
That's
all
awesome.
in. So yeah, no, I think there's a lot of women that are excited about this. They just need the tools and the information.